The war between the Galactic Empire and the machines had lasted so long that even the stars seemed tired of it. Whole civilizations had risen and fallen while the war consumed everything, planets stripped bare for resources, moons turned into weapon platforms, and fleets scattered like ashes across the void. When humanity arrived, no one noticed. They were small, late to the stars, fragile compared to the ancient races that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. But they had something the others had forgotten. They had unity, they had hunger, and they had hope, the kind of desperate, stubborn hope that had kept them alive through every war on their small blue world. The Galactic Council called them useful. A species that could fight the machines on the borders where no one else dared to go. They were given scraps. Broken ships, outdated technology, promises of equality that never came, but humans made it work. They repaired, they built, and they fought harder than anyone expected. Commander Darius Hale had become the face of that fight, a soldier who rose from a colony miner's son to lead fleets larger than anything Earth had ever imagined. His ship, the TNS Resolute, carried both the human flag and the emblem of the Council, a symbol of unity, of trust, of hope. Under his command, the Council won battles they thought impossible: the siege of Vereen, the defense of Euros Prime, the final liberation of the Crystal Worlds. Each time the machines adapted, but Darius adapted. Faster, he was bold, reckless, brilliant, and the alien admirals who once mocked humanity began to whisper that maybe, just maybe, the humans were not as primitive as they thought. The galaxy began to cheer for the strange new allies who fought with iron hearts and fire in their souls. The Council called them heroes, but deep down, fear had already begun to grow. When the final battle came, it was Darius who led it, a coalition of every fleet the Council could muster, thousands of ships from 100 species, and at their center, the Resolute, carrying humanity's small but deadly armada. They struck the machine core world with precision that shocked even the Council's strategists. Plasma storms tore across orbit, artificial suns collapsed, and in the end, the machines were gone, their networks burned, their signals silent. The galaxy rejoiced. For the first time in a century, there was peace, and on the Council's golden world of Lasara, the victors gathered, banners hung high, fleets returned in triumph, and the crowds cheered. But behind the celebration, in the shadows of marble halls and shimmering towers, fear whispered like poison. Alien diplomats spoke in hushed voices. The humans unified under one flag. During war they obeyed no one but their own commander. Another answered, "Their weapons are self-made, their tactics unpredictable. They could destroy us if they wished." And from fear came decision, cold and cowardly, the decision to betray. On the day of the grand victory ceremony, humanity's fleet stood in orbit around Lasara, shining like mirrors against the sun, ships repaired, banners of peace fluttering across their hulls. Darius Hale stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his hands folded behind his back, the weight of the war still in his bones, his officers smiling, relieved. "We did it, sir," said Lieutenant Mora, her voice trembling with joy. Darius allowed himself a small smile. "For once, Lieutenant, we might see peace." But peace was already bleeding. Across the fleet, a coded transmission was sent from the Council's command network. Encrypted, classified, but every ship received it. The message carried a single line: "Operation Containment is active. Human fleet to stand down." At first, they didn't understand. It made no sense. The fleet was at full strength, ready for decommission, not war. But then systems began to fail. Navigation shut down. Power grids flickered, weapons locked. Darius's eyes widened as alarms screamed across the bridge. "Report!" he shouted. "What's happening?" His engineer's voice cracked. "Our systems are being overridden, sir. Council command protocols. Our access is gone." Outside, human ships drifted, helpless, surrounded by Council warships, forming into a wall of light, their weapons hot, their shields raised, and then came the broadcast. The high speaker of the Council appeared across every screen, her calm, elegant voice cutting through the static. "To our human allies, we thank you for your service in the war against the machines. But for the safety of the galaxy, your fleets are to be placed under containment until further evaluation. Your weapons and command codes will be disabled until the Council deems you secure." On the bridge, silence fell. No one moved. No one breathed. The betrayal hung in the air like smoke. Lieutenant Mora whispered, "They're locking us out, our friends?" And Darius's jaw tightened, his voice a low growl. They were never our friends. The alien fleet began to move, ships they had fought beside only days ago now turning their weapons toward them. The Resolute shuddered as the first pulse hit, energy washing across its hull, systems dimming, shields collapsing. "Return fire!" someone shouted, but Darius raised his hand. "No, not yet." He stared out the viewport, watching as his people died in silence, ships exploding like dying stars, comms filled with screams. "They're firing on lifeboats?" cried the comm officer. "They're killing our crews." Darius's voice trembled with fury. "Record everything." Across the human network, chaos erupted, hundreds of ships destroyed in minutes, others disabled and captured. Earth itself was unreachable, communications jammed by the Council's satellites. The betrayal was total, perfect, calculated, and merciless. On the Resolute, fire spread across the decks. Smoke filled the corridors, and Darius stumbled through the chaos, helping wounded soldiers, refusing to abandon ship. "Get to the pods!" Mora shouted, but Darius shook his head. "No one leaves. Not yet." He reached the communications console, sparks raining from the ceiling. "Route power to the transmitter," he ordered. "Just enough for one message." The technician hesitated. "Sir, it won't reach Earth. Not through their jammers." Darius's eyes burned with something deeper than rage. "Then it'll reach whoever listens." He pressed the record key, his voice calm despite the destruction around him. "This is Commander Darius Hale of the Terran fleet. To whoever hears this, know that the Galactic Council betrayed their only human allies on the day of victory. We came to save them, and they answered with fire. We will not forget. We will not forgive. We will remember." He sent the message, a pulse of light streaking through the stars as the Resolute's engines failed. And then he turned to his crew. "Now," he said quietly, "let's make sure they remember too." The ship's self-destruct protocols were old, human-made, immune to Council overrides. Darius entered the code, each digit echoing through the burning bridge. Outside, the alien warships closed in, their commanders confident, their voices smug. "End them," said one. "Let this be their lesson." But as the Resolute began to glow from within, the sensors of the alien fleet screamed warnings too late. The explosion tore through space like a silent scream, a light brighter than any sun, and when it faded, the human fleet was gone, erased, nothing but debris drifting among the stars. The Council declared victory, claiming the humans had resisted arrest, claiming the attack was necessary for the safety of the galaxy, and most of the galaxy believed them. But not everyone did. On the frontier worlds, where human engineers had built colonies, where human soldiers had bled beside alien allies, the truth spread in whispers. The Council betrayed them. They said, "They killed the ones who saved us." On the mining moons of Vereen, old veterans lit candles in the dark, whispering the same three words, "We will remember." And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, far from the Council's eyes, a small signal pulsed from a wreck, faint but alive, repeating endlessly through the void. A human voice, broken by static but defiant as ever. "We will remember, we will remember." On Earth, years later, when the message finally reached home, humanity listened in silence. No speeches, no tears, only resolve. The sky over the Atlantic filled with new satellites that night, and every factory that had built peace began building war. The Council believed they had contained humanity, but what they had really done was forge it into something harder, colder, unstoppable. The alliance that should have saved the galaxy had ended in fire, and from that fire, something new was being born. Humanity had been betrayed, but the stars had no idea what it had just created, the species that never forgives. And in the black between worlds, the last echo of Darius's message drifted onward, still whispering through the silence of space. A promise written in vengeance. We will remember. The galaxy believed humanity was gone, erased. Their fleets burned and their colonies forgotten. The Council called it justice. The diplomats called it peace. And the galaxy moved on, worlds rebuilt, trade resumed, songs of victory filled the skies once more. But in that victory there was an unease, a silence that none could name, because deep in the hearts of those who had seen the betrayal, there was still the memory of human courage, of soldiers who fought without hesitation, of a commander who never broke even as the council turned its guns on him. For the first few years, that memory was enough to cause whispers, hushed rumors that perhaps some humans had escaped. Perhaps the message Darius Hale sent before the Resolute burned was more than a cry of vengeance. Perhaps it was a promise. But time is a weapon of forgetting, and the council wielded it well, rewriting records, erasing logs, turning the story of betrayal into propaganda. They called it the Terran Mutiny, claiming the humans turned against peace, that they attacked the council first, that their destruction was mercy for the galaxy's safety, and for a while everyone believed it, everyone except Earth. On the homeworld, the smoke of betrayal never faded. Cities rebuilt not with joy but with purpose. Factories that once made ships for trade now forged war engines under the oceans. Satellites were born in silence. Networks stretched deep underground, and the people stopped believing in diplomacy. They remembered what happened to those who trusted too easily. The nations of old dissolved, replaced by a single authority, the Terran Unity Command, a government that existed only for one reason, to prepare. Under its black insignia marked with a single line of silver, the symbol of remembrance. The world united, every resource redirected, every scientist recalled, every dream reshaped into a single word whispered across generations: never again. For decades, Earth vanished from the galactic stage. No signals, no colonies, no ambassadors. The Council told itself humanity had learned obedience, that the broken race had accepted its place. But beneath the quiet skies of the solar system, the opposite was true. The silence was not surrender. It was incubation. Under the red sands of Mars, weapons were tested that no alien scanner could detect. Under the ice of Europa, shipyards grew like veins in the dark. And near the dying light of Saturn, entire fleets took shape, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, unseen, unmentioned. Their names erased from the records of existence. They called them the Ghost Fleets, commanded by admirals who bore no ranks. Only titles. Shadows, phantoms, echoes, each one trained in silence. Their loyalty bound to a promise older than any government. We remember. Across the galaxy, the Council began to notice strange things. Unmanned cargo convoys vanishing near old machine war zones. Abandoned outposts stripped clean of technology. Their power cores missing. Their databanks empty. Sensors detecting flickers of movement in the dark between stars. Too organized to be pirates. Too coordinated to be chance. The Council's military dismissed it as superstition. But the older admirals, the ones who still remembered Darius Hale, grew uneasy. They wouldn't come back, one said quietly. Not after what we did, another replied. If they do, it won't be for peace. But no one listened, because pride makes even gods deaf. Years turned into centuries, and the human name became myth, a warning told to soldiers and diplomats. Beware the ones who remember. Children on alien worlds whispered bedtime stories about ghost ships that moved without sound, black as night, faceless, invisible, ships that hunted the cruel, that avenged the forgotten. They said the humans lived in the dark between systems, waiting for the day the Council would fall again. The young laughed, but the elders didn't, because sometimes, near the edges of charted space, their sensors picked up strange transmissions, bursts of code older than any machine, written in languages no one could trace, ending always with the same phrase, for Hale. Back on Earth, the world had changed beyond recognition. The sky filled with artificial moons, the oceans alive with factories that breathed steam into the heavens. Cities buried themselves beneath layers of steel. The stars above watched quietly as billions worked without question, generation after generation born into duty, not to conquest but to restoration of balance. Humanity had become something new, not driven by hate but by purpose, not by fear but by memory. Children learned about the Council's betrayal before they learned about the stars. And on every street, carved into every monument, glowed the same words. We will remember. Then one day, after centuries of quiet, the silence broke. It began as static, faint but steady, a repeating pulse that reached the outer colonies of other races. Technicians thought it was a glitch, but when they isolated the frequency, their blood ran cold. It was human code, encrypted in patterns the Council had banned centuries ago. The same signal once used by the Resolute, the ship that had burned at Lasara, and attached to the signal were 3 words, simple, chilling, final: "We are awake." The council denied it immediately, calling it a hoax, a trick by separatists, but fear began to spread faster than truth. Old officers resigned, merchants rerouted their ships, and in the border systems closest to human space, outposts went silent one by one. No distress calls, no explosions, just silence, like someone had reached into the dark and closed a fist around them. At first, they thought it was the machines reborn, but deep down they knew it was something else, something that had waited too long to forgive. In the deep tunnels of Earth, General Arya Voss, the granddaughter of Darius Hale's second-in-command, stood in the command chamber of the new Terran fleet, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy, red dots marking the old council systems, blue marks showing the colonies that still existed under their rule, and at the center a single golden symbol, the Resolute's crest. "The time has come," she said softly, "for the galaxy to remember who we are." Her officers stood in silence, their faces pale but determined. "Are we ready?" one asked. Arya's gaze hardened. "We've been ready for 100 years. The walls trembled as engines far below roared to life, the sound deep, ancient, like the heartbeat of the world itself waking from sleep. Across the solar system, shipyards opened, releasing black ships that climbed slowly into the void. No broadcasts, no names, no warnings, just lightless hulls vanishing beyond the horizon. Humanity didn't announce its return. It simply happened, quiet, unstoppable, inevitable. Meanwhile, in the distant council capital, a diplomat laughed when he heard the rumor. "Humans? They're extinct." But his laughter died when his screen flickered, static spreading across the room, and then a face appeared, old, scarred human, staring directly into the camera, eyes burning with something colder than hate, and a voice spoke, calm, measured, like a ghost remembering its own death. "We warned you once, we offered friendship, and you answered with betrayal. You called it containment, we called it murder. You told the galaxy we died, but here we stand. You took everything from us, and in return we took your future. We will remember." The screen went dark. That was the night the stars changed color over Lysara, the same planet where Darius Hale was betrayed. Flashes of light rippled through orbit as council satellites exploded, one by one, their debris forming a halo of sparks around the world. Then came the silence again, deep and endless, but this time, everyone knew what it meant. The silent years were over. Humanity had returned. And somewhere, hidden deep in the void, far from every star, a ship awoke, the Resolute reborn. Its hull gleaming black and silver, its engines whispering like wind in a tomb, and on its command bridge, a recording flickered to life, the voice of Darius Hale himself, reconstructed from his last transmission, whispering the words that would echo across eternity. They thought silence was surrender, but silence was only the breath before vengeance. The galaxy shuddered, old empires trembled, and the humans, patient and unbroken, opened their eyes to the light of a new dawn, the dawn of reckoning. The stars had forgotten the name of Earth, but Earth had not forgotten the stars. For generations humanity had waited, building strength in silence, turning their pain into steel, their loss into fuel, and their vengeance into prophecy. The galaxy thought them extinct, erased from history. But in the darkness between systems, the Terran fleet moved, unseen, unstoppable, a shadow spreading through the night. Every captain aboard their ships carried the same insignia on their chest, a single line of silver etched across black armor. We remember. When the old council planets began to go dark one by one, at first no one understood. The lights of communication arrays blinked out. Entire colonies disappeared from the grid. Outposts that had stood for centuries transmitted one final signal before vanishing. An ancient human code that no one alive could read, and then silence followed, deep, cold, endless silence. The galaxy panicked. The council's successors, fractured remnants of empires built on lies, demanded answers. Their fleets scrambled into the void to investigate the disappearances, but none returned. Instead, hours later, their black boxes drifted into nearby orbits, recovered by scavengers who played the recordings and heard only static and breathing. A human voice whispering through the noise, calm and cold. "This is for Lysara." That was the moment the galaxy realized the ghosts had come back. The name Darius Hale resurfaced in archives, the one who had led the Terran fleet, the one who had died during the betrayal. But now, messages bearing his voice spread through the old networks, transmissions sent from nowhere, across every known frequency, always the same greeting. "This is Commander Darius Hale of Earth." And then the line that froze the blood of every admiral and senator across 1,000 worlds. "We remember your betrayal, and we are coming." The recordings were impossible. His voice was perfect, alive, his tone human, steady, ancient. They thought it was propaganda, until they realized that each broadcast came from ships moving faster than light, ships that could appear anywhere, ships that didn't exist on any registry. The Terran fleet had returned. On Lasara, the once proud capital of the old council, panic spread like fire. The Chancellor called emergency meetings. "We must open dialogue," she said. "The humans were our allies once." But her admirals refused. "They are not allies, they are executioners." One spat, his hands shaking. "They remember what we did, they'll burn us all." But the Chancellor didn't listen. Arrogance still lived in her bones. She ordered a show of strength, summoning the largest fleet remaining in the sector. 8,000 ships under her banner, each armed with the finest weapons the Council ever made. They positioned themselves along the outer ring of the system, blocking every hyperspace lane leading to Lasara, their commanders confident. "Let the ghosts come," one sneered. "We'll show them what happens to relics of the past." And then the sky above them blinked. The Terran fleet arrived not from hyperspace but from the dark itself, black ships unfolding out of invisible folds of gravity, their hulls swallowing starlight, their weapons silent until the moment they fired. When the first rail slugs hit, the sound wasn't heard but felt. Entire cruisers broke apart like glass, their shields useless, their armor peeled away as if struck by invisible claws. "What is this?" screamed the alien admirals. "Where are their signatures? Why can't we see them?" But by the time the question was asked, half their fleet was gone, and before the rest could retreat, the void filled with light, not from explosions, but from the Terran formation taking shape, thousands of ships moving as one, a living wall of shadow. At the front of it all, a single vessel loomed larger than any dreadnought, its hull engraved with old Terran markings, its name glowing faintly through the dark. Resolute Reborn. Inside, Admiral Darius Hale stood before the bridge window, his eyes reflecting the fire of dying fleets. Time had not aged him. His body rebuilt by human science and patience, his voice calm as he spoke to his crew. No comms, no warnings. They had their chance 100 years ago. His second-in-command nodded. "Sir, the Chancellor's fleet is collapsing. They're begging for mercy." Darius's eyes hardened. "Mercy was buried with my crew." He turned his gaze to the planet below, its shining cities glittering under the pale light of its sun. "Target their defense grid," he said. "Disable it, not destroy it." The crew hesitated, confused. "Sir," Darius smiled faintly. "Let them live long enough to understand what they did." The railguns fired, precise, surgical, beautiful in their cold perfection. Within minutes, the planetary shield of Lasara fell, its generators crippled, its communication towers silenced, and for the first time in centuries, the heart of the galaxy's power stood defenseless. Every screen, every network, every channel across the planet flickered, and then the image appeared. Darius Hale's face, pale and stern, his eyes burning with a calm that frightened more than fury ever could. "To the descendants of the Council," he said, his voice echoing in every home. "You thought time would erase your sins, that silence would bury your guilt, but humanity does not forget. You called our extermination a containment. You erased our history and built your peace on our graves. Now your peace ends." The broadcast ended, replaced by static, and then all power on Lasara failed. The planet fell into darkness. Across the galaxy, the message replayed again and again. "We remember." The old allies of the Council began to turn on each other, fear spreading faster than rebellion. Empires that once ruled whole sectors now hid behind their borders. No one dared to speak Earth's name, even saying it felt like summoning judgment. But in the shadowed corners of forgotten worlds, people whispered in awe, not fear. The humans came back. And in those whispers, hope began to stir again, because for the first time, the galaxy saw that even the mighty could bleed. In the void between systems, the Terran fleet regrouped. Admiral Hale stood alone on the observation deck, looking out at the stars, the reflection of distant fire dancing across his armor. His hands clasped behind his back, his voice low. "We didn't come for vengeance, we came for truth." His aide frowned. "Sir, with respect, the galaxy will call this vengeance." Darius nodded slowly. "Let them. They called betrayal peace. They can call justice whatever they like." Behind him, the holographic map of the galaxy flickered, hundreds of red marks representing council strongholds, one by one turning to blue as they fell. "How far will we go, sir?" asked his aide. Darius's gaze never left the stars. "As far as it takes for them to understand that Earth forgives nothing." Back on Lysara, the Chancellor sat in the ruins of her once great palace, her face pale under the dim emergency lights, her ministers gone, her guards silent, the sky above filled with the soft hum of Terran ships passing overhead. She looked up, tears in her eyes, whispering to no one. "We should have trusted them." Somewhere in the distance, a child looked up at the same sky and asked, "Mother, who are they?" And the mother, trembling, replied, "They're the ones we betrayed." That night, as the Terran fleet vanished once more into the endless dark, the stars themselves seemed to fade, as if hiding from the sight of what they had witnessed, and in the black that followed, a new signal began to pulse across the galaxy. The same code repeated over and over, impossible to block, impossible to trace, the old Terran phrase that had haunted the universe for centuries. We remember. Every empire, every government, every admiral who saw it knew what it meant. The ghosts had come to collect the debt of blood, and there would be no negotiation, no mercy, no forgetting. Humanity had returned to the stars it once called home, and this time, the galaxy would never again call them small. The galaxy had always feared silence, but now it feared what moved inside it. The council worlds were in chaos, communication lines fractured, fleets vanished, and whispers spread faster than truth itself. Everywhere across the stars one name returned like a ghost. Earth. No one spoke it loudly, no one dared, but every admiral and every diplomat who looked into the black between systems felt it watching back, as if the darkness itself carried eyes. And in that darkness the forgotten fleet waited, their engines burning cold, their hulls blacker than the void, their movements invisible to every known sensor. They were human creations, shaped not for beauty but for vengeance. They were the answer to betrayal. For years the council had thought themselves safe, their fleets large, their empires vast, but they had grown lazy under their own arrogance, their weapons polished for parade, their soldiers bred for ceremony, not for war. When the human fleet finally returned, it did not announce itself with fire. It began like a whisper, a distant signal near the border of the Veil Nebula, an abandoned station detecting a faint energy surge. By the time the council scouts arrived, the signal was gone, replaced by wreckage, and floating among the debris was an old Terran beacon. Rusted, ancient, broadcasting two words in perfect, cold clarity. We remember. At the edge of the galaxy, a storm was gathering. The human fleet had rebuilt itself far beyond what any alien could comprehend. Ships kilometers long, lined with rail cannons that could pierce moons. Hulls reinforced with alloys no scanner could identify, powered by cores that seemed to hum with life. Their drives left trails of light that bent gravity itself. At the center of the formation moved the flagship, Resolute Reborn, its engines glowing faint blue, its silhouette cutting through starlight like a blade. Inside its bridge stood Admiral Darius Hale, a man no longer bound by time, his face lined with memory but not age, his eyes sharp and merciless. Before him floated the holographic map of the galaxy, the old council territory burning red, his fleet's course marked in cold blue. He spoke softly, his voice calm but heavy. "We are no longer the students of this galaxy, we are its reckoning." His officers stood in silence. No one saluted, no one questioned. Their loyalty was not to rank or empire but to promise. The promise forged in fire when the council betrayed them. Darius turned toward the forward viewport. The stars reflected across his armor. "Target their forward sectors," he ordered. "Cut power grids, disable their defenses, leave their people alive. I want them to see who we've become." "Yes, sir," came the quiet reply, and the orders spread through the fleet like wind through a forest. One by one, ships powered up, their engines pulsing like the heartbeat of the void. And then, without a sound, they moved. On the council world of Draven Prime, night fell early that day. Its citizens looked up at the sky as stars began to vanish. The lights simply blinked out, one by one, until darkness stretched across the heavens. Their defense satellites sent frantic signals, reporting thousands of unidentified objects entering orbit. But before any command could respond, the skies ignited, streaks of light cut through the atmosphere, not explosions but precision strikes. Hitting power plants, defense stations, and communication arrays in less than 6 minutes, a world of 6 billion fell silent, the entire planet powerless, every system offline. And in the sky above, hundreds of black ships hovered, unmoving, their silhouettes like shadows of judgment. The Chancellor of Draven Prime screamed into her comms, demanding parley. Her signal finally reached one of the Terran ships, and a human voice answered, smooth and steady. You call it peace. We call it silence. Your ancestors called it containment. But we remember. The signal ended, and before she could speak again, her building trembled as shockwaves rippled through the city, glass shattered, and for the first time in centuries, the mighty world of Draven Prime fell to its knees, not by fire, but by fear. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated, one world after another going dark, fleets vanishing without a trace, orbital rings collapsing as though cut by invisible hands. The alien empires began to panic, sending desperate messages to one another, pleading for unity. But no alliance could stand against a ghost. No weapon could target what could not be seen. Humanity struck like a storm of precision, swift, merciless, efficient, each victory announced not by explosions but by silence. Until the galaxy's map itself looked like it was bleeding light. On board the Resolute Reborn, Darius watched the holographic display as the last enemy outpost went dark. The first phase is complete. His second-in-command reported. Darius nodded. And they still don't know how to fight us, he said quietly. They've forgotten what war is. His officer hesitated. Sir, what comes next? Darius's gaze lifted toward the stars. We remind them why humanity was feared. We remind them that forgiveness was their last chance. Meanwhile, the council's remnants met in secret, their chamber once filled with pride now drowned in fear. They're everywhere. One senator cried. They strike and vanish, no warnings, no demands. Another whispered. They don't want territory. They want memory. The chancellor slammed her fist. Then we give them what they want. We'll issue a formal apology. The room fell silent, and then one of the older admirals spoke, his voice trembling. You can't apologize to ghosts. The fleet's next move came like thunder, not toward the borders but toward the heart, the council's capital Lasara, where the betrayal began. For the first time in history, the Terran fleet revealed itself in full, emerging from the dark in formation so vast that it blotted out the stars. A living wall of metal and vengeance stretching across the void, thousands of ships moving as one. No banners, no colors, no symbols, only the faint glow of blue light tracing their hulls like veins. At their center stood the Resolute Reborn, leading the armada back to the world where everything ended. The alien defense fleets assembled desperately, hundreds of ships forming a blockade around the planet. Every gun aimed at the approaching storm, and the alien commander sent a final transmission, his voice shaking. This is the Council Defense Force. Identify yourselves. Darius's voice came through, calm, unshaken. We are the ones you betrayed. We are the silence that followed your lies. We are humanity. The alien commander hesitated. What do you want? The reply came like thunder. To finish what you started. And then the stars exploded. Railguns fired, beams of white light cut across the darkness. Energy shields cracked and folded. The Terran fleet moved like a predator, striking with impossible precision. Council ships broke apart before they could even maneuver. In less than 20 minutes, the blockade was gone, and Lasara stood exposed, its atmosphere glowing with the heat of re-entry debris. The capital's towers reflected the fire from above, its citizens staring skyward, realizing their gods were not divine. They were human, and they had come home. As the Terran fleet entered orbit, Darius gave his final command. No planetary bombardment, No mass casualties. They must live to remember what they did. His officers looked at him in disbelief, but obeyed. The fleet deactivated its weapons, and instead, a single transmission went out to every device, every screen, every mind connected to the network. Darius's face appeared once more older, scarred, calm. To those who inherit the sins of the Council, he said, we do not seek your death. We seek your truth. Your ancestors called us dangerous. They were right. We are dangerous, not because we destroy, but because we endure. We remember, and as long as we remember, no empire will stand unpunished. The message ended, the transmission cut, and as the Terran fleet vanished once more into the dark, the people of Lasara fell to their knees, some in fear, some in shame, and above them, the words echoed across the comm channels, written in white fire against the night sky, we remember. That night, the galaxy learned that the humans had not returned for conquest. They had returned for judgment, and judgment was never loud. It was silent, steady, and absolute. Lasara had been the shining jewel of the galaxy once, its marble towers and crystal domes symbols of order and pride, its streets filled with the hum of 1,000 species, its council halls echoing with speeches of peace that hid centuries of deceit. But on that day, it became a graveyard of sound. The day the council fell silent began with light, white and endless, pouring from the skies as the Terran fleet arrived, ships blacker than shadow orbiting the planet like a crown of judgment, their engines whispering through the void, their weapons cold and ready. Every sensor on Lasara screamed warnings, but the command centers received nothing but static. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, and in that silence, the people remembered what their history books had erased: Earth. The name they were told belonged to traitors, the name they mocked as primitive. That name now burned across every sky as the Terran fleet opened its transmission channels. Inside the council tower, the last chancellor of Lasara stood trembling, her voice shaking as she shouted to her officers, "Open a line! We must speak to them!" But no one moved. Her words fell like dust, because every screen in the chamber had already come alive, showing the same image: a man in dark armor, face pale and calm, eyes sharp as blades, behind him the vast bridge of a ship glowing faintly with blue light. Admiral Darius Hale stared at them without anger, without expression, only a quiet certainty that crushed every heart that saw him. When he spoke, his voice was steady and low, but it carried through every frequency in every corner of the world. You killed our people in silence, so now silence will answer you. No sound followed. No threat. No declaration. Just stillness. The council members looked at one another, confused, afraid, and then the lights began to die. One by one, the great cities of Lasara went dark, power grids collapsing, satellites falling from orbit, the entire planetary network unraveling as if unseen hands were tearing it apart. Screams filled the air, not from fire or death, but from the weight of nothing, the sudden absence of every sound they had known. Their world was not destroyed. It was disconnected, cut away from the galaxy it once ruled, its proud communication towers silent, its engines dead, its armies blind, and above it, the Terran fleet floated in perfect silence, their guns unmoving, their presence enough to break the soul of an empire. In the council chamber, the chancellor sank to her knees, her golden robes torn, tears streaking her face. "Why won't they speak?" she whispered. "Why won't they end it?" But Darius Hale had already ended it, not with destruction, but with understanding. He wanted them to feel the same helplessness humanity had felt when their fleet was surrounded, the same silence that had followed when the council called it containment. Now they knew what it was to be contained, what it was to be forgotten, by the universe that once cheered their rule. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the same pattern spread. Every major council world began to fail, not by weapon or fire but by code. Terran programs infiltrated their systems silently, rewriting, disabling, dismantling every piece of infrastructure that had once given them power. Orbital defense rings froze in place, their guns useless. Fleets sat motionless as human AIs took control of their cores, their captains screaming into dead comms, "We can't move! We can't fight!" And all they heard back was static, punctuated by a faint voice repeating through the void, "We remember. On one outer colony, a desperate admiral tried to rally his ships, shouting over broken comms, "They're just humans. Fire everything." But when his ships fired, the bolts of plasma never reached their targets. Instead, the energy curved back, redirected through gravitational fields the humans had created, tearing his own fleet apart. And as his flagship fell into the planet's atmosphere, his last words were caught by a recording drone. "Gods help us, they've become the storm itself." The Terran fleet moved system by system, precise as a surgeon, unstoppable as time. They did not conquer. They erased authority, cutting the galaxy's hierarchy down until nothing remained but silence. On planets once filled with alien arrogance, children looked up at the sky and saw black ships watching them, unmoving, wordless, leaving messages carved in light across the night. Mercy was the first casualty, and then the ships would vanish, leaving only fear and the weight of memory. Back aboard the Resolute Reborn, Darius Hale stood before the viewport, watching the pale glow of Lasara below. His officers silent, waiting for his command. Captain Mora, now his second in command, stepped closer, her voice soft. "It's over, sir. The council's gone." Darius didn't answer at first, his reflection dim in the glass, the stars cold behind him. When he finally spoke, his tone was not victorious but weary. "No, it's never over. Every empire believes its end is the last. But arrogance always finds a new voice." Mora frowned. "What do we do now?" Darius turned to face her, his eyes calm, distant. "We watch. We remember. We make sure the galaxy never forgets this day." As the Resolute Reborn turned away, the Terran fleet followed, vanishing into the dark like phantoms, leaving Lasara silent beneath them. The planet's night sky filled with the fading glow of engines that sounded like whispers of the dead. And as the people looked up, they saw their reflection in the ships above. Not gods, not saviors, but judgment, pure and absolute. For weeks after, no one in the galaxy spoke. Transmissions fell to nothing, trade routes collapsed, governments went quiet. It was as if the entire universe held its breath, listening for the next human word. But none came. Earth said nothing. Earth wanted nothing. Earth had no demands. It had simply delivered truth, and that truth echoed through the stars like thunder in a vacuum. Betrayal never dies, it waits. In the years that followed, Lasara's survivors rebuilt in quiet humility. They turned their palaces into libraries, their armies into teachers, and in every school, the first lesson every child learned was not of their history, but of Earth. And on the first day of every new year at midnight, the sky above Lasara was filled with lights, hundreds of ships glowing in formation, spelling the words no one would ever forget: "We remember." And across the galaxy, in the dark reaches where no light reached, the humans watched from afar, silent guardians of the truth they had forged, knowing that peace bought by lies was only ever a pause before another war. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had taught it what silence meant. That was the day the council fell silent, the day arrogance finally met its echo, and the stars, for the first time in 1,000 years, listened instead of speaking. The galaxy had fallen into silence, not the silence of peace but the silence of fear. Worlds that once laughed at humanity now whispered their name like a prayer. The council's banners had been torn down, their fleets reduced to drifting metal, and across the void, every species waited, wondering what the humans would do next. Would they build an empire? Would they demand tribute? Would they finally claim the galaxy they had once been denied? But Earth did nothing, and that frightened everyone more than war ever could. For months, the Terran fleet vanished again, no transmissions, no threats, no sign of their presence. The stars seemed normal, yet every world felt watched, because deep down they knew humanity was still out there, waiting, watching, remembering. In the shadow of Saturn's rings, the truth stirred. Hidden under layers of ice and metal lay the beating heart of Earth's vengeance. The Citadel, a colossal station carved from an asteroid, its size beyond comprehension, built in secret over centuries. A city of war and memory, its surface black and alive with light, its interior filled with hangars, forges, and command decks. At its core burned the symbol of humanity's unity, a single silver line on a black field, glowing faintly in the dark. This was the throne of the Terran Unity Command, and it was here that Earth would judge the galaxy. Inside the Citadel's vast council chamber, General Arya Voss stood before a circle of admirals and scientists, the descendants of those who had survived the betrayal, each wearing the same insignia of remembrance, her voice calm but carrying the weight of 1,000 years. "The council is gone," she said. "Their worlds are broken, their fleets destroyed, but justice is not vengeance. We do not erase history, we correct it. Every empire built on blood will be reminded who they made bleed." Her words echoed across the chamber, every officer silent, every soldier listening. They had followed her through the silent years, through rebuilding, through waiting. Now they would follow her into judgment. The galaxy began to feel Earth's hand again. Not through war but through control. The old council systems came alive under human code. Networks long thought destroyed reactivated. But now their transmissions were different, neutral, unyielding. Every planet received the same broadcast. A simple message in every language known. The age of deception is over. You are free. But you will remember who freed you. At first, many celebrated, thinking humanity had forgiven them, that the Dark Age was ending. But then they realized what freedom under Earth meant. There would be no more council taxes, no more centralized rule, but also no more safety, no more lies to hide behind. No empire could claim ownership of another species again. For every attempt at dominance, every fleet that moved toward conquest, a Terran ship appeared, silent and unannounced, hovering above their capital until they backed down. They called it the Judgment Protocol, a shadow law that ruled the stars. The humans didn't need to command, they simply existed, and the galaxy obeyed. Yet within the Citadel, not everyone was content. Among the officers stood those who wanted more, men and women forged in battle who remembered the fire of betrayal more than its lesson. One of them, Admiral Karan, a hybrid born from human and alien descent, stepped forward, his tone sharp. "We've proven our strength. The galaxy fears us, but fear fades. We should lead them, not haunt them." Arya turned her gaze toward him, her eyes cold but steady. "Leadership is a crown built on arrogance, and arrogance is what destroyed the council." Karan didn't bow. "And fear will destroy us," he said quietly. "They will rise again one day, and when they do, they won't come in ships. They'll come in silence, the same way we did." The chamber went still, Arya's expression unreadable. "Then they'll find we're still watching," she said, and dismissed the meeting. But even as she walked away, the doubt in Karan's words stayed with her. In the years that followed, Earth's shadow stretched across the stars, trade resumed, alliances formed, and yet everyone knew who held the unseen reins. The Terran fleet didn't interfere unless provoked, but their silence carried more power than any law. When pirates struck a convoy, a human ship appeared days later, and the pirates vanished. When an empire tried to seize a colony, its weapons failed before the first shot, and the sky above glowed with a faint message written in light, "We remember." Slowly, fear became faith, and faith turned into respect, even reverence. Temples were built on alien worlds honoring the Watchers from Sol, the ghosts who ended tyranny. Stories passed down through generations painting the humans as both saviors and demons. But Earth was not at peace, far beyond Neptune. At the edge of known space, strange signals began again, faint and rhythmic, not human, not alien, something older, every transmission identical. A series of numbers repeating endlessly, until one Terran AI decoded it, revealing a single translated phrase. "The cycle begins again." Arya stared at the data in silence, her expression unreadable. "Origin?" she asked. The technician hesitated. "Outside the galactic rim, ma'am. Coordinates unknown. The signal is calling." The words hung in the air like prophecy. For centuries humanity had been preparing for betrayal from within the galaxy. But what if the real threat had been waiting beyond it all along? Later, alone in her quarters, Arya opened an old recording, the voice of Darius Hale, preserved since the days of fire, his tone calm even through static. "If humanity survives the council, it will face a greater enemy, the one it cannot outfight. Time itself, memory fades, mercy returns, and when it does, betrayal will be reborn." Arya turned off the recording, her reflection dim in the glass. "Not this time," she whispered. "Not while Earth remembers." The next day, she gave the order that would mark the beginning of a new era. Reactivate the outer fleets. Send probes beyond the rim. If the universe is waking, then so are we. The command spread like wildfire through the Terran systems. The ghost fleets once again lighting their engines, their shadows stretching across the stars, and the galaxy looked on, terrified and awed, as the humans moved once more, not in anger, but in purpose, their silence returning, their watch unbroken. In the darkness beyond mapped space, a single human beacon drifted toward the unknown, its signal steady, defiant, echoing through endless night. We are humanity. We forgive nothing. We forget nothing. And we are coming. The judgment of Earth had begun, not as a war, but as a promise, a quiet, eternal vow that as long as stars burned and lies were told, humanity would remain the shadow that followed them, watching, remembering, and waiting. The stars had grown quiet again. But it was not the peace of victory. It was the silence before something vast, unseen, and inevitable. Humanity had restored order to the galaxy, not through rule but through fear, not through conquest but through memory. The council was gone, its remnants scattered, its arrogance burned out like dying embers, and yet, in the deep stillness that followed, Earth began to feel the weight of its own legend. Stories of the Terran fleet had turned into myth, temples built in their honor, prayers whispered to the ghosts who watched from the dark, and humanity, once the victim, now stood as the shadow that balanced the scales. But even the strongest shadow cannot see what waits beyond the light, and far beyond the rim of the galaxy. Something was stirring, something older than war, older than betrayal itself. The first signs came quietly, at the edge of the Perseid Divide. One of the Terran listening outposts caught a pulse, faint and rhythmic like a heartbeat echoing through the void. At first they thought it was just cosmic noise. But then the rhythm shifted, forming words, frequencies that aligned into a pattern that no AI could decode. A voice that wasn't mechanical, wasn't human, but alive, whispering through the static in a language no one recognized. Every attempt to translate it failed, until one night, the signal broke through, reshaped itself into human speech, calm, ancient, and heavy with knowledge. "You are awake," it said, "and we remember you." The words froze the room. The technicians looked at each other in horror, because the voice did not belong to any known species. It was not even transmitting from a location within the galaxy. It was coming from the void beyond, the space between galaxies, the place where even light hesitated to go. General Arya Voss stood at the command deck of the Citadel, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the transmission, her heart steady but her eyes cold. "Put it on the main array," she ordered, and the room dimmed as the signal played again, the voice stronger now, deeper. "You broke the silence, little world, you ended the old order, and now you must answer for what you've become." Around her, officers exchanged looks of unease. One whispered, "It's not a threat, it's a judgment." Arya's reply was soft. "Judgment goes both ways." The room fell into silence again, and for the first time in centuries, humanity didn't have an answer. Outside, in orbit around Saturn, the Resolute Reborn hung like a monument of steel, its hull reflecting the pale glow of the rings. Inside, Admiral Darius Hale's image flickered across the central screen, his AI reconstruction now fully active, his presence immortal. "Arya." His voice echoed through the chamber, calm, unbroken. "You've done what I could not. You gave humanity the power to be feared, but remember what I said. The greatest enemy isn't betrayal, it's time. Time erases scars, and when the pain fades, mercy returns. That's when they strike again." Arya's gaze didn't waver. "Time hasn't erased anything, Admiral, not for us." But even as she spoke, she knew the galaxy had already begun to forget. The younger races no longer saw humans as vengeance made flesh. They saw them as protectors, as gods, and that terrified her more than hatred ever could. The voice from beyond returned, stronger now. "We watched as you burned your betrayers. We watched as you silenced the council that ruled the stars. But you have not restored balance. You have tipped it, and now we come to correct it." The Citadel shook as power fluctuations spread across every system. The lights flickered, instruments failed, entire sectors went dark, and then, above Earth's sky, a rift appeared, black and bright all at once, like the fabric of the universe itself tearing open. From it came ships, but they were not ships in any familiar sense. They were shapes that hurt to look at, their hulls shifting, their forms fluid, bending space around them. The Watchers had arrived. Ancient beings from beyond the void. Silent witnesses to every rise and fall the galaxy had ever known. They were the architects of order itself, and now they had come for humanity. Panic spread across the colonies. Terran fleets mobilized instantly, ships rising from every hidden dock and secret moon, their engines igniting like stars being born. The Resolute Reborn led the charge, thousands of human warships aligning into formation. The largest armada ever assembled, their black hulls gleaming under the light of the rift. And as the enemy emerged, humanity didn't retreat. They advanced. Aria's voice filled every comm channel, her tone sharp, steady, filled with the same calm fury that once lived in Darius Hale. They call this judgment, but we know judgment. We lived it. We survived it. We are not the Council, and we are not afraid. To every Terran ship, this is not defense. This is declaration. No one judges humanity again. The void erupted in light. Terran railguns roared, gravitational cannons twisted reality. Quantum flares sliced through the fabric of space. The Watchers' ships retaliated with beams that erased matter itself. Entire fleets vanished in white fire. The battle raged not for hours but for days. Across systems, across dimensions, the galaxy watching helplessly as the strongest species it had ever known fought against gods. For every Terran ship that fell, 2 more took its place. For every lost world, 1,000 voices screamed into the dark. We remember. The Watchers had come to unmake them, but humanity had long stopped being something that could be unmade. In the heart of the chaos, aboard the Resolute Reborn, Aria stood on the burning bridge, alarms flashing red, crew shouting as systems failed, shields collapsing. Someone cried, "We're surrounded." Aria's eyes burned like fire. "Then we take them with us," she said, and pressed the command key that activated the fleet's final contingency. Operation Soulflare. Across the human armada, ships began to glow, their cores overloading, their energy building into one massive pulse. And through the comms, Aria's voice spoke her last words, calm, resolute, and unbroken. To the ones who watched from the dark, "You wanted balance, then let this be it. We are humanity, and we do not kneel." The light expanded, swallowing the void, a storm of pure energy rippling outward, collapsing the rift, erasing everything caught within it. Then there was silence again. Weeks later, the galaxy searched the edges of space where the battle had been. But there was nothing, no ships, no debris, only the faint echo of a transmission, repeating endlessly on an old Terran frequency. The voice soft, distant, and eternal. "We are still here." Some said it was Aria's last broadcast. Others said it was Darius Hale's AI still watching from the dark. But no one truly knew, because every time the transmission was traced, the coordinates led nowhere, to empty space, as if the message was coming from the void itself. Centuries later, when the galaxy rebuilt and peace returned, children still looked to the stars and asked about the humans, and the elders would whisper, "They're not gone. They became the stars themselves. They are the silence that comes before war. They are the Watchers now." And far beyond the rim, in the endless dark between galaxies, a single light flickered to life, a beacon carrying 3 words that had once shaken empires. Words carved into eternity itself. We remember still. The galaxy would never forget again. Because even in silence, humanity spoke louder than gods.